Back, we
are
had
back.
a little bit of a
We had a
disruption.
power outage.
Yes, so what we're going to do is just continue with our summary. So if you missed anything, just continue. Go back to our first video of Hebrew slaves, and this will be part 2 of
Right.
Hebrew slaves,
Mm-hmm.
the laws concerning Israel.
Right.
Now, these laws are unfolding as we speak because they are very valid. And so as they are valid to this very day, Yahweh is enacting upon his laws that have already been written at Mount Sinai, agreed upon, and sealed in blood. So let's continue. We went through chapter 21. Chapter 22 will also continue with laws concerning various laws. So let's look at verse 28. Do not revile an Elohim, nor curse a ruler of your people. Now, you may say, do not revile
an Elohim.
An Elohim. What does that mean? Nor curse a ruler of your people. So he's saying, don't revile a God of Israel with small e. Do not revile a little God.
But you know, Moshe was called an Elohim.
That's exactly what I was going to.
When we look at this, we have to look at it from the standpoint of a person who has been placed in a position of authority, over you. But remember, these are Yahweh is talking and teaching a righteous people.
Right.
He's not talking about unrighteous people.
Or someone to pervert.
Exactly. But he is talking about giving us instructions concerning a righteous nation and people who are supposed to be therefore who is put in position, leadership position, as in the case with Moshe. You had Moshe, Aaron, Aharon, Miriam, the elders of each of the tribes, those who were set in positions that last week's Torah talked about how he made them leaders and rulers over groups of people. So those are the people who, that's what he's talking about when he says Elohim or ruler of people. He's not talking about the other little gods that people worship. So he's setting up a righteous government.
Right, exactly. And the proof is the second part that says, nor curse a ruler of your people. So that's someone who acts in the category of a savior of his people or a judge of his people. So either way, you are not to degrade them in your talk, because that breaks another law. The law of when you speak, what is that?
Lashon hara.
Lashon hara. Exactly. We cannot do Lashon hara because that's speaking the evil tongue, character assassination. So Yahweh is very practical. And look at this next one, and we'll jump into chapter 23, verse Exodus chapter 22, verse 29 says, do not delay giving your harvest and your vintage. Give me the firstborn of your sons. Likewise, you are to do with your ox and your sheep. It is to be with its mother 7 days. On the 8th day, you give it to me. So that describes how you give, which is for a son, he is circumcised
Right.
on the 8th. Verse 31, you are set apart men to me, and men and women. You do not eat any meat which is torn to pieces in the field. You throw it to the dogs. Throw it to the dogs. So let me address first. Give me your firstborn. It doesn't define male or female, but it says firstborn. And what are the firstborn as men and women?
Right.
They're chosen as priests. Absolutely. That is a categoric
Firstborn.
Priesthood.
Right.
Now, neither one of us are firstborn, but we understand from the law that as we have a firstborn, there is a law concerning. And so we cannot afford to just dismiss this because we have firstborn. As we're husband and wife, we have a firstborn.
Right.
And he would be, whether male or female, but ours is a son, he would be of a category of birthright priesthood.
That's right. And privilege.
Man, yes, man has nothing to do with this. Your registration, your schools of theology, or all those things does not apply here.
Right. Right.
He is a priest according to this law. As well, he is married now and with a family. His firstborn, it is also carried over to he and his wife, firstborn. So look how detailed Yahweh is about certain things.
Right.
In order to understand it, you have to read through the Torah and put everything together to understand that it doesn't just apply here. Right. But it applies someplace else. When we get into the book of Leviticus, it's going to give you the laws concerning the Levitical priesthood.
There you go.
And there's offerings. But right here in the book of Shemot, leaving out, he's already selected firstborn. Right. Why? Because there's a law of perpetuity here. I hope I said that right, which is always.
Forever.
Forever. Right. Which is when he took the firstborn of Pharaoh, he even reversed the law and said, now because I have destroyed your firstborn, I take to myself the firstborn. So look how Yahweh's Torah, and how many men and women would be free if they only knew that. Right. That they themselves were priests of the Most High Yah, and they must walk according to that. And there is a inheritance along with it. Yahweh doesn't work us without pay. Absolutely. And if you are a firstborn and you're suffering as the poorest of the poor, you needlessly suffer because you don't know the Torah to walk in where you can reap the inheritance of a firstborn. So listen.
Yeah,
come on.
That's a heavy a position of authority.
Yes.
And he solidifies that, like you said, in Leviticus, when we get to Leviticus. And lets us know concerning it, because you have, then he breaks them up in groups. He has the high priest. He has the Levitical priests who are born blood from the tribe of Levi, and
which is the Kohanim.
And then, the Kohanim are the high priests, and then the Levitical priests that
would be born
blood, and then the firstborn, no matter throughout Israel, who were firstborns, and each of those levels of priests have jobs to do. So it's really important. I mean, I love getting into the book of Leviticus, but we would better move on before the lights go out again. We're hoping that they won't go out, but
And listen, that's not that's in no way casting any shadow of where we are.
No.
But what happens is just like in the U.S., you have those short spurts of power outages. And they have kind of perfected a little more than some of the other developing countries.
Right.
And so just leave it right there. That is no shadow of Ghana where we are, but just know they are in the world of technology as well, but
and enhancing their infrastructure.
Exactly.
So we're here.
Some places a little more difficult.
Oh,
but
absolutely.
other places like in Accra, the capital, or other places,
you have less.
Yes.
Power
Yes.
shortages.
In other words, we're like 3 hours away. Mountains and valleys divide us, and so you have all of those technologies and places where they are still placing those towers. But anyway, let's go into Bereshit, Shemot, I'm sorry, chapter 23. That's Exodus chapter 23. And again, we will pick out some pieces. Verse 4.
Well, can we just quickly? Can I relate this verse 1 and 2? Do not bring a false report. Do not put your hand with the wrong to be malicious witness. Do not follow a crowd to do evil, nor bear witness and strive so as to turn aside after many, to turn aside what is right. Do not favor a poor man in his strife. That this is one of those. This is talking about, relates to, and I'm forgetting where it is, where it says, Yahweh says, these 6 things I hate, and the 7th is an abomination. And all of these are tied up in there. And when he says the 7th is an abomination, it's and one who brings discord or works discord within the brethren, within the house of Israel.
Nature.
Man, I'm telling you, that's that slithering snake that goes around through a community and tears it up from the inside, and then stands there looking like, oh, see, I wonder how all that happened. And they know that they were the one that did sow discord amongst the brethren. Father Yahweh says that's an abomination to him. And he says he hates these other things. False report, hands running quickly to do evil, or feet running quickly to do evil, hands putting to a wrong, malicious witness, lying and being a malicious witness, saying you witnessed something that you did not witness. So I just wanted to bring that up concerning that.
And let me point out also, if you read these laws, these are part of the commandments. And so this is how you apply, look at them, read them, understand them, know them, acknowledge them. This is how you put yourself on a better standard, knowing sin, knowing right and wrong. Verse 7, verse 6, do not turn aside the right ruling of your poor in his strife. Keep yourself far from a false manner, and do not kill the innocent and righteous. For I do not declare the wrong right, and do not take a bribe. For a bribe blinds the seeing one and twists the words of the righteous. So when you look at each of these laws, these are commandments, and we are to obey them today, just as they were given to us at Mount Sinai. This is what we're reading. Verse 10, and for 6 years, you who are sowing your land, and shall gather in its increase. But the seventh year you are to let it rest, and shall leave it, and the poor of your people shall eat, and what they leave, the beast of the field eat. Do the same with your vineyard and your olive yard. 6 days you are to do your work, and on the seventh day you rest, in order that your ox and your donkey might rest, and the son of your female servant and the sojourner be refreshed. So this law is so important. That is the Sabbath law.
Sabbath law.
And so that Sabbath law is to all creation, and because it was trying to think of a word that's good for disobeyed. The Sabbath was disobeyed. It defiled the whole earth. It defiled all of creation. This law right here, this is foundational. This is from the very beginning when he chose 6 days of work, and the seventh, he said he rested and hallowed it. And so this is a detail. 6 days you work, the seventh is a rest, in order that your donkey, your ox might rest, your son, your daughter, your female servant, the sojourner. This is a major law. And inside of it, there is the promise of Jubilee.
That's right.
Going right back to where we started. It is the promise of restoration of Israel.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I wanted to just quickly give that when I related the first two verses, that's Proverbs 6:16 down through 19, where he says there are 6 things that I hate, and 7 is an abomination. So I'm going to give that Proverbs 6:16 through 19.
Verse 13. And in all that I have said to you, take heed, and make no mention of the names of the other mighty ones. Let it not be heard from your mouth. 3 times in the year you are to celebrate festival to me. Let's look at the first one. Verse 15. Guard the festival of Matzot. 7 days you eat unleavened bread.
That's right.
As I commanded you at the time appointed in the new moon of Aviv, for it you came out of Mizraim, and do not appear before me empty-handed. So that's the first time we come together as a nation.
Right.
Second time, and the festival of harvest, the first fruit of your labor, which you shall sow in the field, and the festival of ingathering at the outgoing of the year, when you have gathered in the first of your labor from the fields. 3 times in the year, all your males are to appear before the Master Yahweh. He says males here, but that is both male and female. Let's go back to coming out of Mizraim.
Yeah.
It was both male and female. But when he says all your males, 3 times a year, they come to Jerusalem. Remember when Joseph and Miriam were on their way. They were going to pay taxes, but the taxes was scheduled during the visits, one of those 3 visits, which was the third one, which is Tabernacles. So they came with their taxes, as well as satisfying the 3 visits. That was the last visit of the year. And so that's when Yeshua was born. So see how important it is, even marks the time, the birth of the Savior. And look at the deception of the bride. The deception says, we're going to celebrate it December 25th. December 25th is at the winter time.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, they
you
wouldn't be.
are, matter of fact,
They wouldn't be in the field.
this T-shirt that I have on, learn not the ways of
Of the
the
heathens.
heathens. That's the ways of the heathens.
Jeremiah
chapter 10, verse 2.
Absolutely.
Read that whole thing from verse 1 through, I think,
Absolutely.
maybe 12.
Yeah.
And you'll see.
Right.
December 25th is the winter solstice. And that's what they're celebrating.
Right.
That this is the end of the solstice, and the spring solstice is to come.
Is to come.
And once the spring solstice comes, it will signal the return of the S-U-N. We're not supposed to worship the S-U-N. We're supposed to worship the S-O-N. And that's the return sun that we're waiting for, not the S-U-N.
Right, and let's leave pagan things for the pagans. And they don't mind letting you know that those are pagan things, and leave it there.
Exactly.
Leave the pagan things for the pagans. But those of us who say that we are of the one true and living God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, we need to walk in that truth, and all of His truth is established right here, and it's being read. It's being read all over the world, in these Torah portions, and studied all over the world.
Mm-hmm.
So He's given us His festivals and His timeline that He wants us to establish in the earth as a righteous people set apart to Him.
Start with Passover.
Say again, it's
get yourself ready. Yes.
Yeah. He's governing. He's teaching a nation how to govern itself.
Right. And guess what's next?
Mm-hmm.
He's teaching Israel, because Israel hasn't quite, not all gotten it yet. But then He's going to restructure down to just Israel. Mm-hmm. And Israel would be all nations. Mm-hmm. They will inherit all nations, mm-hmm. those who survive. And this will be the law of the lands of the earth. And Yahweh will, one way or the other, with you or without you, He will impose His truth.
Absolutely.
Like I said, truth is verifiable.
That's right. Mm-hmm.
Verse 20, see, I am sending a messenger before you to guard you in the way and to bring you into the place which I have prepared. There it is, right there. Be on guard before Him and obey His voice. Do not rebel against Him, for He is not going to pardon your transgressions. If that's not talking about Yeshua, the deliverer, who's coming, He's saying, I will send someone to bring you a messenger. So would that be the same messenger? Yes. The same messenger that Moshe talked to in the book of Exodus. Remember when the bush was on fire? And the book of Acts picks it up in the 7th chapter and says, by the hand of the messenger that led them in the wilderness. So it's the same messenger that He's sending, Yeshua HaMashiach. And He says, do not rebel against Him, for He is not going to pardon your transgression. So it's a Him that is a judge,
and
which is Yeshua.
Absolutely. And then just quickly, we see this in the character of Yehoshua, the son of Nun, who comes after Moshe and begins to rule and conquer the different nations. After Moshe, he takes over. And all of these characteristics are in Yehoshua. And what is his name? Yeshua. Yeshua is just a short of Yehoshua.
It's the poetic version.
So it says that He's going to bring you in. He will bring you into the place which I prepared. And Yehoshua did all of that was said. He was a type and shadow of Hamashiach. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, and he didn't pardon. He didn't pardon anything that was not like Father Yah.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't pardon them. So, and he
And
did exactly. The scripture says he followed Father Yahweh. Absolutely. And he did
exactly.
exactly what he was supposed to do. And he led the people into the land of promise. Mhm.
So that I can make sure you see this as Yeshua. I know many times you didn't see him in the Old Testament, but let me show you. Verse 21 again, be on guard before him and obey him, his voice.
Mhm.
Do not rebel against him, for he is not going to pardon your transgression. What? Of all of these laws that he just spoke to us
Right.
about,
For my name
for
is in him.
my name is in him.
Yahshua.
Mm-hmm.
Yahushua.
Mm-hmm.
Whichever way, Yahushua, however you want to pronounce it.
Mm-hmm.
Yah is in there, and that's the name of the Almighty. That's
22.
his name.
But if you diligently obey his voice and shall do all that I speak, obey his voice, all that I speak, tells us right there, that's Yahweh in flesh. Yahweh in the flesh. All that I speak, then I shall be an enemy to your enemies. Wow. And a distresser to those who distressed you. And that right there goes back to where he says, if at all you are found in the hands of the one who
You're captive.
stole you,
You're captor.
he shall be put to death.
Right.
And so right here, he's saying, I shall be a distresser to those who distressed you.
Distress you.
And this is so unique because he's saying forever. So you will become those who do not obey these laws. Your children shall become the slaves
How about
of Israel.
that? Mm-hmm.
For my messenger shall go before you, shall bring you into the Amorites and the Hittites, Perizzites, Canaanites, Hivites, and the Jebusites, and shall cut them off. So Yeshua comes as our deliverer, and he fight against the Amorites, Hittites, Perizzites, Canaanites, Hivites, Jebusites, cutting them off. Do not bow down to their mighty ones, nor serve them, nor do according to their works, but without fail overthrow them, and without fail break down their pillars, their altars. Let me see. This is how we know when we have entered that time. Verse 25. And you shall serve Yahweh your Elohim, and he shall bless your bread and your water, and I shall remove sickness from your midst. Understand that right there is very significant. Removing sickness from us means you live longer.
That's right.
So our ages will go up to, let me just give you the end result, 999. I'm not saying everybody is going to live to that period of time, but you have the potential. Why the potential? Because we can't live 1,000 years and beyond because of the original sin that is still a law that is in place. And none of us can outlive that one day law.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to leave it right there.
Mm-hmm.
Here's another way that you can tell we have entered into that time. Also, we have not entered into that time. So if those who are in the land at this time, and we have not gone into a time of no sickness, that's not the right people.
Right.
Verse 26 says, none shall miscarry or be barren in your land. I shall fill the number of your days. So you shall live long life, and you shall not have miscarriages. That's Israel. We haven't gotten into that time yet. I shall send my fear before you and cause confusion among all the peoples whom you come, and make all your enemies turn their backs to you. And I shall send hornets before you, which shall drive out the Hivites and the Canaanites, the Hittites, from before you. I shall not drive them out from before you in 1 year, lest the land become a waste, and the beast and the field becomes too numerous for you. Little by little I shall drive them out from before you until you have increased and inherited the land. So this will be, we will once again inherit the land, because it's talking about the eternal deliverer. These things too must be done through and by the eternal deliverer.
Hallelujah.
Chapter 24, verse 1. Exodus chapter 24, verse 1. And to Moshe he said, come up to Yahweh, you and Aharon, Nadab, and Abihu, and 70 of the elders, of Israel, and you shall bow yourselves before, or from a distance. But Moshe drew near to Yahweh by himself, and let him not draw near, nor let the people go up with him. And Moshe came and related to the people all the words of Yahweh and all the right rulings, and all the people answered with one voice and said, all the words which Yahweh has spoken, we shall do. That right there is a mouthful. This is at Mount Sinai.
We shall do.
All that he says, we shall do.
It's a wedding.
Yes.
And that's a wedding
Exactly.
covenant. I do.
It's a covenant. It is an oath. And we entered into it because we were there. Israel was there.
Our forefathers were there.
Verse 16. And the esteem of Yahweh dwelt on Mount Sinai, and the cloud covered it for 6 days. There's that theme again of 6 days. On the seventh day, he called to Moshe out of the midst of the cloud on the Sabbath. And the appearance of the esteem of Yahweh was like a consuming fire on the top of the mountain before the eyes of the children of Israel. And Moshe went into the cloud, into the midst of the cloud, and went up into the mountain. And it came to be that Moshe was on the mountain 40 days and 40 nights. So Moshe rode the elevator up before there was an elevator. It was the cloud. He stepped into the cloud.
Right.
And it took him, it elevated him to Yahweh's presence. And the people saw this. So this is how Yahweh was setting Moshe apart from the people.
Right.
So this was one of those periods of 40 days.
40 days.
And then they themselves did corruptly because they longed for Moshe to be in front of them.
They had to see.
They needed to see.
They needed to see.
And that was the lesson
Their
from
leader.
Mizraim, Egypt. We need to see
We
a
need
God.
to see a leader. We need to see a redeemer.
And
We
so
need to
Yahweh
see.
is teaching them a lesson.
That's right.
He
Absolutely.
knew what was going to happen, but he's teaching them this lesson. And still today, we have to learn the same lesson.
And you know, the disciples, the Talmudim of Yeshua, asked him that same question because they wanted to see it. They wanted, and will you now restore the reigns to Israel?
Exactly.
Israel's looking for redemption. But what did Yeshua, HaMashiach say? He said, it's not for you to know. what is in the timeline of the Father.
Yes.
Worry about what you're supposed to be doing.
Exactly.
You are supposed to be healing the
6:28.
sick, raising the dead, giving sight to the blind, walking out the Torah, teaching, giving the good news of the Torah, the good news of the reign of the kingdom of Elohim. Worry about your part.
Exactly.
Right.
And if you tried healing the sick, you tried raising the dead, you've tried all of these things and it didn't work for you, then as it says in John chapter 14, starting with verse 12, he says, you see all of these things that I do, you shall also do, and even greater works shall you do. But it's in what he said first. All these things that I do. He was the Passover sacrifice.
Right.
He kept Passover.
Right.
He kept the Sabbath and the holy days. Unless you're doing these things, you're trying to do them without power. It will never work.
And you have to have the obedience coupled with the belief to walk it out.
Exactly.
The obedience, you don't just believe, but you have to have the obedience walk.
Because obedience is better than sacrifice.
Absolutely.
And if Yeshua is our sacrifice,
Right.
your obedience to his word is better than his sacrifice
That's
on
what
the
we're
stick.
supposed to give.
That's
that
where we're
sacrifice.
supposed to be.
Absolutely. Hallelujah.
All right.
Amen.
So I think we can conclude right there.
Amen.
We'd like to say to everyone, thank you again for visiting us on another edition of
Let's talk Torah.
Shalom.
Shalom.